everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the History and Evolution series. Up to this point, I've mostly done H&E videos on restaurants, grocery chains, and television channels. But today, I'm doing my first one on a board game. You have to have been living under a rock to have not at least heard of Monopoly. You know, the game with all the property deeds, houses, hotels, and money. And hopefully I got you excited for this with my little TikTok trailer I made recently. Well, today I'm delivering on the promise I made in that video, and I'm going to talk about how this game, which, pun intended, has monopolized game nights all around the world, started as a mere idea, but eventually grew into this huge thing we know it as today. But before we start, I want to ask that if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you can hear more lectures like this one. You know, the kind you actually want to listen to, and ring the bell so you know when they're up. Now we're ready to get started. In 1903, Georgist Elizabeth Magie created and patented a board game called the Landlord's Game. Magie's goal with this game was to demonstrate how rent payments leave renters in poverty and bring wealth and prosperity to property owners. This game is known for being the first to use a continuous path rather than having a clear start and finish space. The game had neighborhood names on each of the board spaces, which players could acquire for a given amount of money, as well as a jail. The original Landlord's Game had two sets of rules by which it could be played: monopolist and anti-monopolist. In the anti-monopolist version, all players were rewarded as one player created wealth. But in the monopolist version, which is closer to Monopoly as we know it today, the object of the game was to form monopolies and force opponents out of the game by driving them to bankruptcy. In 1906, Magie self-published this game and submitted it for publication to the Parker Brothers in 1910, which they initially rejected. Between this time and the acquisition of the Landlord's Game, many changes were made to the rules, including being able to add houses to properties, which were originally made of cardboard. In 1932, the Parker Brothers bought the copyright for a game called Monopoly from a man named Charles Darrow. However, it was eventually revealed that Darrow had written down the rules of the Landlord's Game that had been given to him by friends, and he passed it off as his own under the name Monopoly. Upon discovering this, the Parker Brothers bought the rights to Magie's original patent for $500. Parker Brothers began marketing Monopoly in 1935, who designed the game board based on the streets of Atlantic City, New Jersey. In 1936, the game was licensed for sale outside of the U.S., which was the game's first stepping stone towards becoming an international pastime. Something a lot of people don't know is that during the not long after occurring World War II, a version of the game was created in the UK that was designed specifically for prisoners of war, in which tools that might aid in their potential escape were hidden. In 1991, Parker Brothers and thus the game Monopoly was bought out by game and entertainment conglomerate Hasbro. At the time of the acquisition, there were only two versions of Monopoly, regular and deluxe. Generally speaking, Monopoly boards consist of 40 spaces and 28 properties, which themselves are grouped into 8 color groups. There are also spaces for jail, free parking, go to jail, luxury tax, and income tax, 3 chance spaces, and 3 community chest spaces. When players land on the chance or community chest space, they draw a random card from one of the 16 in each respective category, depending on which they land on. Some other important cards included in a Monopoly deck are the title deeds, or the cards that list the name of the properties a player might acquire, and the rent another player must pay the property owner should they land on said property. And of course, who could forget the 2 6-sided dice a player needs to roll to determine how many spaces to move? If a player rolls double or the same number on both dice, they get to take a second turn. But if that player rolls doubles 3 times, they have to go to jail. Rolling doubles is also a way in which a player can get out of jail. More recent additions also include a speed die, which many prefer to use to make this game faster, which is something that many people prefer since, as many bemoan, the game takes forever. In 2008, Parker Brothers' parent company Hasbro called for some updates to Monopoly. These included changing the colors of some of the property groups, an increase in the luxury tax amount from $75 to $100, and updates to the situations that would call for chance and community chest cards, though their effect remained the same. Most recently, the Monopoly money that comes with the game was marked with an M with 2 horizontal strokes through it in place of a US dollar sign. Don't quote me on this, but this was quite likely due to issues with Monopoly money being used in the counterfeiting business. And remember how I said earlier that the houses and hotels were originally made of wood? Well, as you should know by now, they eventually came to be made of plastic. When most people think of Monopoly, they think of classic Monopoly. However, there are many versions of the game that, while they generally have the same rules, they come with some kind of twist or differentiation from the classic version. Monopoly Junior, simply put, is an easier version of the game meant for young children to play so they can learn before they play the more intense classic version when they get older. As its name implies, Monopoly for Sore Losers, to quote Hasbro directly, celebrates and creates sore losers. The game is so called because of a unique game piece, a token that protects a player from negative effects, such as going to jail, and does so at other players' expense. A couple years ago, I got Monopoly for Millennials for Christmas. The properties in this version are all contemporary places of business, such as coffee shops and yoga studios. And touching on the financial struggles of millennials, the currency in this version is experience points rather than actual money. It seems there's a version of Monopoly dedicated to every major city, not just in the United States, but all around the world, in which the properties are all notable locations in the given city. For example, Cleveland in a Box, which my mom and I have played, is a basic game of Monopoly in which the properties are places like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Mally's Chocolates, the Dog Pound, and Jacobs Field, just as a few examples. It also seems that there's a version of Monopoly dedicated to every famous movie and TV show out there, naming its properties and adjusting its rules and the names of things on the cards based on the show or movie in question. Of course, there are so many other versions of and editions of Monopoly, but because there are so many of them, I just don't have time to talk about all of them today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all learned something that you didn't already know about this game and how it's monopolized both childhoods and adulthoods, not only in its native US, but all around the world. How do you feel about Monopoly? Is it a staple of your game nights? Do you always win? Always lose? Do you hate the game? Feel that it's not for you? Let me know in the comments down below, and tune in next time for another lecture you'll actually want to listen to. Bye!